Ever feel like your memory just isn't what it should be? I mean, in a world full of smartphones and Google, it's so easy to feel like we've kind of outsourced our ability to remember things. Well, today, we're diving into Moonwalking with Einstein. It's the story of a journalist who spent 1 year training his mind, and in the process, he uncovered this lost art of memory and what it really tells us about being human. So let's jump right in.
So, picture this, ancient Greece. A poet named Simonides of Ceos steps outside a banquet hall for just a moment, and in that moment, the roof collapses, killing everyone inside. The bodies, they're completely unrecognizable. But then Simonides does something incredible. He closes his eyes and mentally rebuilds the entire room. He sees every single guest exactly where they were sitting. But just walking through this building in his mind, he identifies every victim for their grieving families. And just like that, out of a total disaster, the very first memory palace was born.
That amazing story brings up a huge question, one that's really at the center of this whole thing. Is having a powerful memory some kind of innate superpower you're born with? Or is it a skill that we've all just forgotten how to use?
It's wild to think about, but for centuries, memory training was a huge part of a real education. Roman senators, for example, used these techniques to give these epic speeches without a single note. Medieval scholars used them to memorize entire books, sacred texts. A powerful memory wasn't just a cool party trick. It was the sign of an educated, disciplined mind. It was the foundation of wisdom.
But today, that art is pretty much gone. Our memories now live outside of our own heads, right? They're on our phones, our computers, up in the cloud. And yeah, that's super convenient, no doubt about it. But it makes you wonder, what do we trade for that convenience? What happens to our own minds when we stop asking them to remember?
All right, so that question leads us straight to our guide for this journey, a journalist named Joshua Foer. And like most of us, he felt his own memory was, not great. But his world was about to get turned upside down when he stumbled into the very strange subculture of competitive memory.
So Foer is at the U.S. Memory Championship, but just as a reporter. He's watching these so-called mental athletes do these unbelievable things like memorizing hundreds of random numbers in just minutes. And he's totally skeptical. I mean, this is a guy who reads books and forgets them almost right away. He can't remember names, facts. To him, these people seem like they're from another planet. They're savants, a totally different kind of human.
But then he meets Ed Cook, a young grandmaster of memory. And Ed just completely shatters Foer's whole worldview. He insists that he and every other competitor there has a perfectly normal average memory. The secret, he says, isn't some gift. It's a set of ancient techniques, a way of thinking that literally anyone can learn.
And boom, the gauntlet is thrown down. Ed Cook basically makes a bet. He says with just an hour of practice a day, he can coach Foer, our skeptical journalist with a self-proclaimed bad memory, to win the entire U.S. Memory Championship. The experiment was officially on. So how in the world is that even possible? Well, 4 years training starts with the exact same technique that Simonides invented 2,500 years ago. It's time to learn how you can build your very own memory palace.
The memory palace, or the method of Loxi, works because it hijacks something your brain is already absolutely brilliant at: spatial memory. I mean, think about it. You can walk through your own house in the pitch dark without bumping into things, right? The technique just repurposes a place you know inside and out, like your childhood home, and turns it into a mental filing cabinet for stuff you want to remember.
And the process itself is actually surprisingly simple. You pick a place you know by heart, and you map out a very specific route through it. Now here's where the magic happens. You take whatever you want to remember. Let's say it's a shopping list, and you turn each item into a vivid, weird, unforgettable image. Then you place each of those crazy images at a specific spot along your mental route. To remember the list later, you just walk the path in your mind and look at what you left there.
So what makes an image actually stick? Well, the secret comes from this ancient Roman textbook. And it basically says, the weirder, the funnier, the more shocking or even disgusting the image is, the better you'll remember it. Our brains are just hardwired to pay attention to the unusual. That's why a truly bizarre mental image will always beat a boring old list.
This gets right to the heart of why this stuff works.
Psychologists call it the Baker/Baker paradox. Think about it. If I show you a picture of a guy and say, his last name is Baker, that's just an abstract fact. It's slippery, easy to forget. But if I tell you the man is a baker, your brain instantly lights up with connections. You think of flour, white hats, the smell of fresh bread. The whole trick of memory training is to turn every abstract thing you want to remember into a rich, connected baker.
Experts do this kind of thing. It's called chunking, all the time, automatically. A chess grandmaster doesn't see a board as 32 separate pieces. They see a handful of meaningful patterns they've learned over thousands of games. And here's the proof. If you arrange the pieces randomly on the board in a way that makes no sense in a real game, their memory advantage completely disappears. A memory palace is just a system that lets anyone do that. It lets you chunk random information into something that has meaning.
So, armed with these ancient techniques, our reporter totally dedicates himself to the craft. What started as just a story for a magazine becomes a full-blown obsession.
For a whole year, Foyer lived the life of a mental athlete. And we're talking an hour a day, 6 days a week of just pure practice. Memorizing poems, endless lists of random words, and deck after deck after deck of playing cards. He wasn't just covering the story anymore, he was training to become its czar.
So after a full year of this intense training, did it actually work? Well, the answer really comes down to this one number, 1 minute and 40 seconds. That is how long it took Forward to perfectly memorize the exact order of a shuffled 52-card deck. And that wasn't just a personal best, it was a brand new U.S. record. And in a crazy ending that sounds like it's straight out of a Hollywood movie, the journalist who walked in a year earlier with just a notebook and a lot of skepticism walks away as the new U.S. memory champion. The experiment was an absolute success. It proved that an average memory, with the right techniques and a lot of practice, can be trained to do seemingly superhuman things.
But the story doesn't just end with a trophy. Four's whole journey reveals something much, much deeper about why our internal memories are so essential, maybe now more than ever before.
To really get this, think about these two real-life cases. On one side, you have a man known as S. His memory was so powerful, so vivid, that he literally couldn't forget anything. He was drowning in a sea of details. On the other side, you have EP, a man with amnesia who couldn't form any new memories. He was trapped in an eternal present, unable to build a sense of who he was or how he related to time. These two extremes show us that memory isn't just about storing facts. It's the very fabric of who we are.
And that brings us to what Foyer ultimately figured out. The goal, he realized, was never really about memorizing playing cards. The real benefit of all that training was that it forced him to pay attention, to be more mindful, to engage with the world on a deeper level. I mean, to create a memorable image of something, you have to really see it first, right? The training didn't just change his memory. It completely transformed how he experienced life itself.
And this is really the heart of it all. The art of memory isn't about becoming some kind of human supercomputer. It's about actively cultivating the parts of our mind that lead to creativity, to connection, to wisdom. Our memories, the ones inside our heads, are the internal library from which we pull our character, our values, our very sense of self.
Which leaves us with one final, pretty crucial question to think about. In this rush to offload every fact and figure onto our devices, to rely on technology to remember for us, are we forgetting something fundamental? Are we at risk of forgetting that the richness of our lives isn't built on what we can look up, but on what we can connect and create within our own minds? Because what we choose to remember and how we do it might just be one of the most important things we do.